Hello, Simran. How are you doing?
Hello, John. How are you, man?
Not bad. As ever, I'm curious about your EP. We must talk into the actual backstory about the actual EP's creation, because originally it was going to be an album, right? But then you've had issues regarding COVID-related factory delays. Tell me more about this.
Well, the plan after album one a year ago was to just fire out an EP quickly, just to kind of keep things moving. And I wrote a whole album really this year. And yeah, the idea was for it to be a full-length LP, but because it's taking up to a year for vinyl to be manufactured, we were sitting there thinking, well, if we put an album out as an album, we can put it out digitally, but the physical release isn't going to happen for like 9 months to a year, and it's all just kind of like won't be happening at the same time, and so that was really frustrating and disappointing. And I've got so much music, I just wanted to keep putting it out, so we decided to divide it into 3 EPs. This being the first one.
Sure. Okay, that sounds pretty good. I mean, essentially, it must be quite frustrating for any artist if you've got a certain set of emotions or stories and you have to keep that in a certain kind of status. That will obviously, affect not just the fact that you want the music to come out, but how you actually, your mindset is. I mean, moving on from that must be, a prevalent activity, I should think.
Yeah, it is frustrating because, I prefer to sort of think of like my music in terms of a body of work, particularly with Primitive Ignorant. I'm thinking of it more in terms of like making a film or making something visual rather than, oh, here's a song, randomly. They all kind of fit together, and, there's segmenty parts which kind of, give it this kind of like a bit more like a sort of a film or a play. So yeah, it is disappointing. And I think, as an independent artist, you want to be able to put out a vinyl. Do you know what I mean? Just to keep things ticking over. Just to kind of keep your head above water, really. So it's kind of disappointing, really. But loads of people are struggling as a result of the pandemic, and I wouldn't really, like to sort of put myself in that category of like struggling, really, because I've got enough food to eat and I've got a roof over my head. So.
Indeed. Being thankful for those things is always good.
Yeah.
I have specific questions about the songs from your new EP called Life or Death. The first one is, you said life seems simultaneously accelerated and mired in a freakish status. What does that paradox do to your ability to communicate through a 3 to 5 minute song structure?
Sorry, can you say that again?
Basically, if we're at this moment in time where things seem to be accelerating really fast, but at the same time, we seem to be this weird status as well, how does that affect your ability to communicate like your emotions within a very short amount of time? I mean, there's obviously a lot of confusion that would be surrounding your thoughts, let alone your day to day.
Well, I think, with this EP, like, I think, time seems quite sort of strange and weird and twisted and contorted since obviously, the pandemic started. And, it's really hard to kind of reflect back over the last 18 months, and kind of everything seems a bit kind of all over the place and confused. And, I guess like death has been this kind of, a lot of people have died, basically, like a lot of people have died. And, it's been like a mass extinction, really. And it kind of, caused me to sort of think about, I mean, it made me feel perverse, if it might sound perverse, but it made me feel quite grateful about, being alive myself. And, I am really grateful that, like, so far, me and my family have managed to make it through the last sort of 18 months, but particularly, sort of, it made me think I'm coming up to sort of 10 years clean of drink and drugs as well, so I'm really grateful for that. I almost died a few times 10 years ago, so it made me feel kind of like really sort of lucky and grateful that I was still alive after all of that, really. And I think it's that kind of juxtaposition of ideas of life and death that I wanted to kind of generate in the EP, and kind of just how there's a kind of, hair's width in between the two, really. It's just I I think kind of, yeah, being grateful for being alive is really important, you know, particularly like, you know, there's a lot of talk about suicide at the moment and stuff. And, you know, I did try and commit suicide once in 2004, you know, obviously unsuccessfully. And I just think, you know, anyway, it just, the whole period of where I'm at in my life in terms of, you know, being clean, and I think around the stuff around the pandemic kind of, yeah, generated that kind of that tension in the music, and those juxtaposition of ideas.
Sure. Again, I always appreciate your candid nature. Like, you always are able to, like, not for any other reason other than feeling indebted to certain groups which you've obviously become part of, whether it be through your religion or through, you know, what you went through in 2004. You're able to actually step up and say, look, you know, this has happened to me. So I commend you for that. Next question.
I think it's important, just sorry, quickly, just to talk about those things, not as a kind of, you know, oh, I'm narrating a story necessarily, but I just think more people who feel who can talk about things, it just might, you know, I don't consider myself to be that important, but it might just kind of, you know, allow somebody else to talk about it, and therefore it might just help somebody else. But, you know, whether it does or not, you know, who knows, but hopefully, you know, but.
Yeah, fair. I appreciate that philosophy quite personally, actually. Second question: High Rise Vampires covers grand themes. Pick one that resonates with you the most today.
Well, it's a kind of it's like a horror story covering kind of a few different themes, really. I like the title because it kind of harks back to Grenfell, really, about that kind of you know, what happened there, and obviously, you know, still quite recent, you know, and unresolved and painful kind of story, really. And it also just it kind of feeds into the idea of kind of you know, as a human being, kind of killing yourself, really, and destroying yourself and destroying those around you in order to try and kind of, you know, find your place in society, you know, trying to kind of you know, it's so difficult, isn't it? I think, particularly in London, to try and kind of maintain your individuality and maintain your principles and maintain your sort of freedom and kind of survive, you know, whether it be to do with just literally being able to pay the rent, or being able to feed yourself, or literally whether it's like, you know, in terms of like race relations, being able to kind of like, you know, feel like you're safe walking down the street, or, you know, that you might be equal to anybody else. And I think I you know, as sort of discussed in my first record, I think, you know, I went to the end, really, trying to kind of find a place where I felt comfortable. And that's why the chorus says the words, "I'm barely human flesh," you know, because I think, you know, London in particular, like, it destroys, you know, your ability to kind of be who you want to be, because it's just so kind of like cutthroat and difficult to survive, I think, you know. And, you know, as a musician, it's just like, as an artist, it's just completely been killed, isn't it, by the government, by just like unaffordable rent, you know, yeah, by a kind of an environment that just sort of doesn't really appreciate sort of different ways of living. I think it's just such a flawed system, and yeah, that's what that song's about.
Okay, yeah. Well, it's a really powerful song, and yeah, like you pretty much put into perspective quite a few different things that it covers. So that's brilliant there. Death Threats is a song which highlights your isolated position, being both a Sikh and a punk who's used a symbol of their religion as a base for their art. Does your perspective feel like a privilege or a problem?
I think to have any kind of perspective is a privilege, really. I think, like, you know, to be able to to kind of explore things in different ways is a privilege. I mean, I feel you know, privileged to have the identity that I do, you know, now, which I don't believe that I always did. Um, and that song, you know, I called it Death Threats because it was like it was kind of, and all the vocals on it are all sampled vocals, so the whole track is like a sample. So I mashed together all these different kind of ideas and sounds, and it was just a kind of there's no human voice or sound in there, and it was kind of just to sort of show the kind of lack of humanity and the kind of deadness of kind of being kind of abused on the internet, and you know, people who are, you know, have their lives destroyed by kind of bullying on the internet, really. I mean,
Sure.
I don't know, particularly like on Twitter and stuff like that, and on Facebook. It happened to a friend of mine recently as well. You know, it's just I don't know. It's weird, isn't it? It's like it's so hard to know, like as a kind of race or as a breed of people, like, you know, whether we're sort of you know, whether we're evolving or regressing. I mean, I don't know. It's because sometimes when I think about race, I really think, oh, you know, it's really great, isn't it? Like we're really moving forward. Things are really different, and people are having conversations that they were never having before. And, you know, you see representation in places that you never, which definitely wasn't going on 20 years ago. And then just things happen, and then you just think, fucking hell, like this is just getting worse. I don't know. What do you think? I mean, it's a very, that's me, it's a very simplified, impossible argument to sort of have in 2 minutes. But
Well, I'll tell you this much, at the risk of breaking the etiquette of it being more about you rather than about my perspective.
yeah,
If we're living in the world now where you and I, we've come from a generation where there's like 2 or 3, 4 channels of, say, terrestrial media output,
yeah,
at least in the UK. And so everyone, to an extent, can kind of agree on a certain reality that we all share. Fast forward to now, where every other subculture has got their hub of information being disseminated from a source. They can, in their heads, have their own idea of what that reality is when they're online. Then when they go outside and intermingle with everyone else, there's lots of realities bumping up against each other, which don't really go together. I mean, these have been called inflammatory terms like, say, the culture war or whatever. If you've got all of those different intermingling, they're not even intermingling, they're very opposing realities. It's very hard to have a generalized idea as to how far we've gone, because we've all got different ideas about what the past was, where we are now, and where we're going, you know, future-wise.
yeah.
So that's my particular take on it at the moment, you know.
Yeah, it's it's a weird one, isn't it? Yeah.
It's very, very weird. Let's just stick to your music. Let's move on. We have, oh, this is interesting. All right, so Last in the Riot, which is the Sordid Sound System Rebirth. Tell us all about the collaboration of this track, because I think there's quite a story to it from what I can gather.
Yeah, so a guy called Stuart, Sordid Sound System, he really liked the song, and he really wanted to do a remix, and we decided that we thought, well, I think sort of coming up to this sort of time of being coming up to 10 years clean, whatever that means, really doesn't really mean anything, I suppose, but you know,
That's important to you. That's a milestone.
But I think, you know, it doesn't. It's not something there to kind of, you know, get the balloons out and kind of start celebrating. It's more, I guess, like you reflect on addiction as an illness and how it's perceived in society. And again, like the race thing, you know, not trying to compare it too much, but just trying to say, you know, you wonder like how much kind of understanding there is, and how much, you know, as a society we've evolved in terms of treating it as an illness and kind of like helping people. And obviously, you know, since the Tories have come in, the place that got me into my rehab is now Pret-a-Manger. Nowhere can kind of all the funding has been cut, and
Wow.
you know, drug-related deaths are just on the rise. You know, and you've got the kind of Tories banging the drum saying what we need to do is get everybody into a decent job. You know, and it's just like that. You know, or we need to chuck people in prison. You know, or we need to arrest more people, or we need more police on the streets. And you know, if we arrest more addicts and chuck them in jail, you know, then that will solve the situation. But it's obviously not dealing with the root of the problem and viewing it as an illness. And yeah, so anyway, the proceeds from the track are going to you know, the charity that got me into my rehab, because I went in through the NHS. Obviously, you know, I mean, these places cost like £6,000 a week. I mean, they're unattainable. Do you know what I mean? For anybody, you can't get in through the NHS anymore because there's no NHS funding, because the NHS has been completely ripped to shreds. So what do people do? You know, how do they get a detox? I mean, you know, going into a rehab doesn't solve all your problems, but it gives certain people a refuge, a place to go for 2 weeks, 1 month, 2 months, or whatever it is, you know, to kind of away from it all, to kind of, you know, try and sort of reset their life, you know. So yeah, it's just, I mean, it's just that thing, isn't it? The Tories kind of, you know, which I just found so ironic that, you know, then all the anti-lockdown and Tories were going, oh, we can't have these lockdowns because it's bad for everyone's mental health. I mean, when the fuck did they ever give a fuck about anyone's mental health? Do you know what I mean? They were just like, oh, you just need to go running and get a job. And then, you know, you won't suffer from depression, and, and, you know, you won't feel like, you know, banging up a load of drugs in your mum, you know?
Sure.
So,
It'd be remiss of me not to ask, I mean, this is a fascinating subject, of course, but Jamie's work, what is it about his work that made you think, right, this is the person that should be trusted to remix this song from the previous Stuart, sorry.
He'd done some really cool stuff, and he's doing some stuff with Working Men's Club, who I really love. And he's just got this kind of quite cool Weatherall-esque kind of sound to what he does. And it's just great because it's like a new song, isn't it? You know, I mean, you know, I've done a couple of remixes in this project, Primitive Ignorant, you know, that Body in the Thames, and then this one. And I was always quite like, until I met these two guys, like I was always a little bit suspect of remixes, about how much, you know, like, I don't know, I was that kind of bothered about it. But yeah, they both completely like changed my view on it, because I realized that it's not just, oh, we're remixing a song. It's like, you know, we're taking the idea and we're making something completely new. And, you know, to me, it's just got a totally different vibe to it. You know, I mean, it's barely recognizable, is it? You know?
Well, yeah, but I mean, the best thing about this collection of songs and this EP is that it seems to take what you kind of started off with on the last record, and it really expands it. It sounds like, I mean, I don't know, club culture isn't what it was anymore for obvious reasons, but this sounds like it should be something that you hear in a big place with a lot of other people dancing. Like the analogy of, like, say, when you have a film and people say, hey, you've got to see this on the big screen. That's how I feel about Life or Death. Was that intentional?
What, as the EP as a whole?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it really is like supposed to be a cinematic kind of journey, a visual thing, you know. So at the beginning of the EP, you know, I've got the kind of the life support machine, and then the bass kind of going over that, and then obviously the last track, which I suppose you might go on to in a minute, so I won't. But yeah, it's supposed to feel like, the idea is to try and kind of, yeah, make it like it's a film, and there's different characters coming in, and it's a bit more like a narration of a story, of a snapshot of my life, and my perception of a few things that were important to me at that time.
Sure, it does feel very panoramic in that way, and you're right, there are a few more things we want to say, primarily about this last track, which is fundamentally interesting. I mean, was it always the plan to end an EP dealing with life and death on a track which is constructed from the room sounds of your, at that time, as yet unborn child? I mean, was that always the plan?
No, not at all, not at all. I mean, my wife went into labour, and it was like 3 days, and she was there kind of in this ward, you know, having all this kind of, I'm not going to sound like a very good husband when I tell this story, but I'll tell it. So she's like having all this gas and air, and you know, and like kind of chaos is going on, and so they're like monitoring the baby's heartbeat through a sort of whatever it is, you know, and you can hear it. Doo, 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 doo. So I was like, right, okay, get out of the way, stand aside, got my phone out and was like, started recording the beat. And then they were like, what the fuck are you doing? I was like, look, I've just got to record this, right? And then I was like, right, I've got her. I didn't know it was a girl at the time. I've got the baby's heartbeat, and I've got to use that as a drum beat for the song. Like that'll be like the most amazing thing. Like basically an unborn child making music, and then yeah, and then I kind of just recorded her making sort of noises, and I think initially when I said I was going to make a song solely, everything comes from her. I think people thought I was going to make like a really sort of cute song or something, but obviously made it really dark and messed up. But I did play it to her, and she started smiling. So.
Well, there you go. There you go. You have a kindred spirit there.
Yes, I wanted to start with that initial thing of life support machine of kind of nearly dying, because I was resuscitated twice, you know, in 2011, and then ending kind of, you know, with the birth thing. So it was like the sort of cycle of life and
sure,
reincarnation and those sort of ideas. But yeah, it's great. It's great to have made a song, you know, with my daughter. You know, she's not even aware of anything. You know, that was really, really great. She's got a Primitive Ignorant t-shirt as well, actually.
I have to ask, because you're so candid about your past and whatnot, have you sublimated what I might view and others may view as an addictive personality into your love of music? I mean, case in point, you needing to record that moment so you could create more of what it is that you are healthily maybe more able to get into. Is there some truth to that, or have I just like woken up and come up with the worst idea for a question?
And it's very painful at times, you know. I wouldn't really say making music was something I particularly enjoyed. You know, I love it, and I think I get a lot of kind of power and motivation and pride and I don't know, self-esteem and kind of yeah, I feel like it's part of me, you know. But like I don't really think it's something I particularly enjoy. Like I don't like I enjoy sort of having an ice cream in the park, or you know, do you know what I mean? Or like, you know, lying on a beach in a nice foreign country. I don't enjoy it like that. It's not like, oh, here we are, really enjoying playing my guitar, and it's not like that really, which is a shame, because I guess maybe that's what it should be about. But then I personally don't think that's what it's about really anyway. It's about trying to kind of communicate, isn't it? Trying to kind of make sense of your own identity and your own space in society, right? Through, I suppose it's just quite a limited scope, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, if that's your experience, I mean, it can be easy for people who have a certain process to feel that they have to, in some way, not have to, but they feel quite easy about maybe judging another person's process. You know, like when I hear you say that you don't enjoy playing music, and I kind of want you to enjoy it, but at the same time, that might be how you create it. You know?
Well, yeah, I guess I don't know, like. I guess, you know, I'm not saying there aren't moments of it that make me happy. Like, I think there are moments like when you're hearing it back in the studio and it's sort of come together and you're like, oh, right, that sounds quite good actually. Like, but I think, yeah, the actual writing of it, you know, and it's never like, oh, it's 3 a.m. and do you know what I mean? And I've there's some, do you know what I mean? This idea has just come to me. For me, it's very much like, it's very much like work, really. You know, every day writing. So when she was born in May, I actually wrote quite a lot of this EP straight away afterwards, because I had a load of stuff, but then it didn't really fit together on how I wanted this EP to sound, and I wanted some different sounding tracks to go with it. So yeah, it was like, you know, having a sort of crying baby, writing all day, writing all day, writing all day, and then quite a lot of work on Zoom, because it's quite a few tracks, isn't it?
Well, yeah. You know what's really frustrating about this conversation, because we made a promise to each other to keep it to a certain length,
Yeah.
and I feel that length is slowly far away. But what we'll do, as per usual, we will put more of these thoughts and conclusions and questions into a written piece, if that's all right with you. But before we get all capitalist and tell people where they can buy your stuff, we need to discuss the video that I've seen that you were in, you know, basically directed by Steve Gullick. He's such an amazing videographer, and I've taken quite a lot of inspiration from his work of projections. Is there anything you want to say about that before we draw to a close?
Well, it was great because Jamie Hall did the vocals, and it was a great collaboration, and he couldn't be in the video. So we kind of, like, me and Steve, like, didn't really have much of an idea about what necessarily we wanted to do. But I mean, that's what I love about Steve, is I don't really go there with like an idea of like, I want to do this, I want to do that. It's like, here's my idea, and he responds to it. So I have total 150% like faith in it. You know, it's like he takes the music and he for me, he takes it to a different level, because I know when the song is being kind of constructed in the studio, I'm also thinking, well, Steve will do a video, hopefully, and it will make sense in a different way when the visuals are there. So we just shot it all in his living room, you know.
Ah, amazing. It really does work as well. Like the projections on your face and everything. It's so good. I will probably, most definitely, go into detail about that in the written interview. For now, where can people buy your latest material?
Well, it's up on Bandcamp on November the 4th. The whole album will be, and it will be up on Spotify 2 weeks after that. So that'll be the 22nd, 18th.
Okay.
Yeah.
Brilliant, brilliant. Well, until that time, I wish you a good day and your family good health.
Thanks, John. Yeah, always good to talk to you, man.